The news spread through the imperial palace like wildfire. Servants whispered to each other in shadowed corners. Officials discussed it behind closed doors with worried expressions. By midday, everyone in the capital knew. Emperor Zaltharon had chosen a human as his personal bodyguard. Jack Mercer stood at attention in the antechamber of the imperial throne room. He wore the simple black uniform of the imperial guardian, but without any of the usual medals or rank insignia that decorated the other guards. His face remained calm, showing neither pride nor fear as he waited to be officially presented to the court. "This is madness," General Vex Kor growled, his scaled skin flushing deep crimson with anger. The Drakian military leader towered over most other beings in the room, his natural armor glinting under the palace lights. "A human? Protecting our emperor? They've barely mastered space travel." Lady Illyria, the court chamberlain, placed a slender six-fingered hand on the general's arm. "Control yourself, General. The emperor must have his reasons." But even her melodic voice carried a note of concern. She studied the human from across the room with her large silver eyes. The massive doors to the throne room swung open. Jack straightened his posture slightly, though he'd been standing remarkably still for the past hour. Most species would have shifted position or shown signs of fatigue, but the human hadn't moved a muscle. "The Emperor will see his court now," announced the herald, a floating orb-like creature whose voice resonated through the chamber. Jack walked forward, his steps measured and confident. He moved differently than the other guards, less rigid, more fluid, as if constantly ready to change direction. The assembled court members filed in behind him, many still exchanging troubled glances. Emperor Zaltharon sat upon the galactic throne, a masterpiece of engineering that hovered several feet above the floor. His blue-tinted skin and elongated features marked him as of the ancient Altheri bloodline that had ruled for 12 generations. 4 regular guards stood at the corners of the dais, but their positions had been clearly adjusted to make room for Jack at the Emperor's right hand. "My loyal subjects," the Emperor's voice carried easily through the vast chamber, "I present to you Jack Mercer of Earth, who will serve as my personal guardian from this day forward." The room remained silent, the court too shocked or too polite to voice their objections directly. Finally, Ambassador Zorth of the Calaxian stepped forward, his mechanical eye whirring as it focused on Jack. "Your Imperial Majesty, while we would never question your wisdom," the ambassador began, his words carefully chosen, "many of us are curious about this unusual selection. The human species joined our galactic community merely 30 years ago. They possess no natural defenses, no special abilities. Their homeworld is isolated on the edge of the Empire." The Emperor smiled, showing teeth that were just slightly too sharp. "And yet, Ambassador, when the hive minds attacked the Proxima colony last year, it was a small human militia that held them off long enough for our fleet to arrive." Jack remained expressionless, his eyes continuously scanning the room in a pattern that seemed random but was anything but. General Vex Kor could contain himself no longer. "Your Majesty, I have served as your military advisor for 20 cycles. I must strongly advise against this. The human has no formal training in imperial protocols. He cannot possibly understand the complex political landscape of the court." "Cannot I?" Jack spoke for the first time, his voice quiet but carrying clearly. "General, you've touched your ceremonial dagger 17 times since entering this room. You're right dominant but trained to fight with both hands. You have 3 concealed weapons beyond your official ones, and you've positioned yourself exactly 8 steps from the Emperor, the optimal distance to intercept a frontal attack." The court fell silent again, but now with a new kind of tension. The Emperor's smile widened. "As you can see, General, Mr. Mercer observes much, and that is precisely why he stands where he stands." Lady Illyria looked at Jack with new interest, her silver eyes narrowing slightly. The human met her gaze briefly, then returned to his scanning pattern. The court understood then that everything had changed. The human wasn't just a bodyguard, he was a statement, and no one knew exactly what that statement meant. 3 days passed since Jack's introduction to the Imperial Court. The whispers hadn't stopped. If anything, they grew louder whenever the human walked through the palace halls, always 3 steps behind the Emperor. He doesn't even carry proper weapons, muttered Officer Krell of the Imperial Security Force as Jack passed by. The human carried only a simple stun rod and what appeared to be a primitive projectile weapon, technology most species had abandoned centuries ago. Ambassador Zorth had made it his personal mission to learn more about the Emperor's strange new bodyguard. The Calaxian stood in the Grand Hall, pretending to admire an ancient battle painting while his mechanical eye secretly scanned Jack from across the room. Fascinating, Zorth whispered to his aide. No cybernetic enhancements, no genetic modifications, not even neural implants, he's completely organic. The Emperor was holding court listening to disputes between 2 mining guilds. Jack stood nearby, his eyes constantly moving, cataloging everyone and everything in the room. Lady Illyria approached Jack while the Emperor was distracted with the miners' argument. Mr. Mercer, I hope you're finding your quarters acceptable? Her silver eyes searched his face for any reaction. They're fine, thank you, Jack replied politely but briefly. I'm curious. Lady Illyria tilted her head, her long neck bending gracefully. Most would consider it an honor to be chosen for such a position, yet you seem neither proud nor excited. Jack's eyes never stopped their careful scan of the room. Pride makes you predictable. Excitement makes you careless. Lady Illyria's eyes narrowed slightly. She reached out with her mind, attempting to gently probe the human's thoughts. Most species in the galaxy had some form of telepathic resistance, but humans were known to be particularly easy to read. To her surprise, she found nothing. Not the usual barrier of a trained mind, but something different, like trying to grasp smoke. His thoughts seemed to flow and shift constantly, never settling long enough for her to get a hold. Is something wrong, Lady Illyria? Jack asked, looking directly at her for the first time. She stepped back slightly. Not at all. Across the room, Commander Drell watched the exchange with interest. As Chief of Palace Security, he had strongly opposed the Emperor's decision. A human bodyguard undermined his entire security protocol. Something needed to be done. Later that afternoon, Jack accompanied the Emperor to the royal gardens. As they rounded a corner near the fountain, a gardening droid suddenly malfunctioned, its trimming arm swinging wildly toward the Emperor. What happened next occurred so quickly that the watching security officers could barely follow. Jack moved with surprising speed not toward the droid but toward the Emperor. Instead of trying to stop the machine, he simply adjusted the Emperor's position with a gentle touch to his shoulder, moving him precisely 6 inches to the left. The droid's arm swished harmlessly past. Only then did Jack disable the droid with a precise strike to its control panel. Commander Drell approached, feigning concern. Your Majesty, I apologize for this malfunction. We will investigate immediately. Yes, do investigate, Jack said quietly, especially how the droid's safety protocols were overridden exactly 17 seconds before we arrived at this spot. Drell's eyes widened slightly. The Emperor looked between the 2 men, then smiled. An interesting test, Commander. I'm curious. What did you expect to learn? Drell began, then straightened his uniform. I wanted to observe the human's reaction time, to see if he would protect himself first. And, the Emperor prompted, and he didn't protect himself at all, Drell admitted. He protected you in the most efficient way possible. That evening, as servants prepared the Grand Hall for a diplomatic reception, General Vexcor cornered Ambassador Zorth. Well, what? Have you discovered about this human? Zorth's mechanical eye whirred softly. Nothing that explains the Emperor's choice. He's entirely ordinary by human standards. Military background but not special forces. No exceptional service record. No connections to imperial politics. Then why? Growled the general. Perhaps, Lady Illyria said, joining their conversation. That's exactly why he was chosen. He's not what any of us would expect. In the shadows beyond their conversation, Jack Mercer stood silently, watching and listening to everything. The grand reception hall sparkled with the light of 1,000 floating crystals. Diplomats from all 50 systems of the Empire mingled, their varied forms creating a living tapestry of galactic diversity. Emperor Zal Theron sat on a smaller version of his throne, greeting important guests. Jack Mercer stood nearby, wearing a slightly more formal version of his black uniform. Unlike the other security personnel lining the walls, Jack moved occasionally, shifting positions in what seemed like a random pattern. "The human moves too much," General Vexcor complained to Commander Drell. "A proper guard stands still." "Perhaps on your world," replied Ambassador Zorth, joining their conversation. "But I've been studying Earth military texts. Humans believe a moving target is harder to hit." Lady Illyria approached with a tall, purple-skinned diplomat. "General, Commander, Ambassador, may I introduce Ambassador Nix Allah of the Secessionist Worlds?" The three officials stiffened slightly. The Secessionist Worlds had been pushing for independence from the Empire for decades. This was the first diplomatic contact in years. "We are honored by your presence," General Vexcor said stiffly. Ambassador Nix Allah bowed smoothly. "The honor is mine. I must say I was intrigued when I heard about the Emperor's new human guardian. Such an unusual choice." Across the room, Jack's eyes briefly flicked toward their group, then continued scanning. "Excuse me," Ambassador Nix Allah said. "I should pay my respects to the Emperor." As the purple-skinned diplomat glided away, "Commander." Drell frowned. "Something feels wrong." Jack had moved again, now standing closer to the refreshment table where various diplomats sampled exotic foods and drinks. A server approached the Emperor with a tray of ceremonial Altheri wine, a traditional offering at such functions. No one, but Jack noticed when Ambassador Nix Allah removed something tiny from a hidden pocket and dropped it into the Emperor's glass when the server passed by. The server continued toward the Emperor. Jack did not run or shout. He simply moved with purpose, intercepting the server with a polite smile. He took the tray, as if offering to help. "Allow me," Jack said, lifting the Emperor's special glass. He pretended to trip slightly, spilling the wine onto his own hand. "My apologies. It seems I'm not used to the gravity settings in this room." The Emperor looked amused rather than annoyed. "No matter, Mr. Mercer. Accidents happen." Only Commander Drell, watching closely, noticed Jack's expression change slightly as the wine touched his skin. The human's face showed no pain, but he quickly wiped his hand on a napkin and tucked it away. 5 minutes later, Ambassador Nix Allah excused himself from the gathering, claiming a sudden illness. Jack whispered something to the Emperor, who nodded. 2 silent Imperial guards followed the ambassador. "Out." "What just happened?" Lady Illyria asked, joining Jack near a column. "Contact poison," Jack said quietly. "Absorbed through the skin. Likely meant to paralyze the Emperor's breathing system." Lady Illyria's silver eyes widened. "You touched it intentionally? It could have killed you." "Human skin is less permeable than Altheri skin. I calculated the risk." "You should see a medic immediately," she insisted. Jack shook his head slightly. "Already took the antidote. I recognized the poison's sheen when it was dropped in the wine." "You carry antidotes to secessionist poisons?" Lady Illyria asked, surprised. "I carry antidotes to all 47 poisons that could potentially be used in this setting," Jack replied. "It's my job to anticipate threats." For the first time, Lady Illyria looked at the human with something other than suspicion. "You knew this would happen." "I didn't know. But I watched Ambassador Nix Allah from the moment he entered. His breathing pattern, micro-expressions, and the way he kept touching his left pocket all suggested hostile intent." Commander Drell approached, them having overheard. "The ambassador has been detained. His diplomatic pouch contained 3 different toxins." Jack nodded. "There will be more attempts." "How can you be so certain?" Drell asked. Jack looked at both of them with steady eyes. "Because I'm here. My presence has changed the equation. It makes people nervous, and nervous people make mistakes." The Emperor watched this exchange from his throne, a small smile playing on his lips. News of the failed assassination attempt spread quickly through the palace. Security protocols tightened, The secessionist delegation was expelled from the capital. Yet despite these measures, an uneasy feeling settled over the imperial court. The humans saved the emperor's life, admitted General Vexcor during an emergency security council meeting. But this only raises more questions. Commander Drell nodded. He knew exactly what poison was used. He carried the antidote. It's almost as if he expected this specific attack. Lady Illyria tapped her long fingers against the table. Perhaps we should learn more about humans. Not just this Jack Mercer, but his species as a whole. After the meeting, Lady Illyria visited the Imperial Archives. The chief archivist, a small gray-skinned being named Maribel, looked surprised by her request. Human history? We have very little. Your Excellency, they are newcomers to the galactic community. Show me what you have, Lady Illyria insisted. Maribel activated a holo display. Humans evolved on a planet they call Earth. It's classified as a death world by our standards. A death world? Lady Illyria raised an eyebrow. Yes. Extreme temperature variations, powerful storms, large predators, shifting tectonic plates, and over 24 major extinction events in their planet's history. Most species that evolve in such conditions either develop specialized adaptations or die out. But humans survived, Lady Illyria said. Not only survived, but thrived, Maribel continued. And this is the interesting part. Instead of developing specialized adaptations like armor, claws, or venom, humans became extreme generalists, meaning they can live in almost any environment on their planet, from frozen tundra to scorching deserts. They can eat an incredibly wide variety of foods. Their bodies can heal from wounds that would kill most species. And most remarkably, they can learn and adapt at an extraordinary rate. Meanwhile, in the Emperor's private study, Jack Mercer stood by the window watching the 3 moons rise over the capital city. Do you miss Earth, Mr. Mercer? Emperor Zaltheron asked, looking up from a document. Sometimes, Jack admitted. The sky here is beautiful, but it's not home. The Emperor set aside his work. Tell me, why did you accept this position? You must have known how the court would react. Jack turned from the window. You offered a fair contract, and it's an interesting challenge. Is that all? The Emperor's eyes showed he expected more. Jack was quiet for a moment. When I served in Earth's military, I learned something important about protection. It's not about being the strongest. It's about understanding threats and being willing to place yourself between those threats and what you protect. And you believe the rest of the galaxy doesn't understand this concept? Most advanced species evolved past large-scale warfare before reaching the stars. Humans didn't have that luxury. The Emperor nodded slowly. That's precisely why I wanted you here, Jack. You see dangers that others don't even recognize as dangers, the OI. Next morning, Jack accompanied the Emperor to the Senate chambers. Important trade regulations were being debated, and tensions were high. Representatives from wealthy core worlds and struggling outer colonies argued fiercely. Ambassador Zorth caught Jack alone in a corridor during a brief recess. I've been studying you, human. My analysis suggests you're not remarkable for your species. Your physical parameters are average. Your military record shows no special commendations. Why did the Emperor choose you specifically? Jack looked at the Calaxian with steady eyes. Perhaps because I'm not special. When you're not the strongest or fastest, you learn to pay attention to details others miss. Such as the fact that you're standing exactly between 2 security cameras in their blind spot, or that you've met privately with representatives from 3 mining corporations in the past week, or that your mechanical eye has been scanning the Emperor's private documents whenever possible. Ambassador Zorth's organic eye widened slightly. Jack continued in the same calm voice. I notice things, Ambassador, that's all. And I remember everything. I see. As Jack walked away, Ambassador Zorth touched a hidden communicator. The human is more dangerous than we thought. We need to accelerate our plans. Lady Illyria could not stop thinking about what she had learned about humans. She decided to try a different approach to understanding Jack Mercer. She assigned her young aide, Naira, to befriend the human. Learn what you can about his past, Lady, Illyria instructed. Be natural. He will notice if you seem too interested. Naira found Jack in the palace training room early the next morning. He moved through a series of fluid exercises that looked nothing like the combat forms used by Imperial guards. That's interesting, Naira said from the doorway. What do you call that? Jack finished his movement before answering. On Earth, it's called Tai Chi. It's an ancient combat form disguised as meditation. May I join you? Naira asked. Jack studied her for a moment, then nodded. Follow my movements. For the next hour, they practiced together. Naira was surprised by how challenging it was to mirror Jack's seemingly simple movements. Your species values fighting skills highly, Naira said as they finished. Not fighting, Jack corrected. Protection. There's a difference. Is that why you joined what you called Secret Service on Earth? Naira asked casually. Jack paused, giving her a careful look. You've been researching me. Naira blushed slightly. Lady Illyria is curious about you. The Secret Service protects our leaders, Jack explained, deciding to be open. We learn to see threats before they become dangerous. We place ourselves between danger and those we protect. Like what you did with the poison, Naira said. Yes. But physical threats are only part of the job. The hardest threats to stop are the ones you can't see coming. At that same moment, Ambassador Zorth met with General Vexcor and 3 other court officials in a private chamber, designed to block all surveillance. The human knows too much, Zorth said. He's been watching us. General Vexcor frowned. What exactly does he know? I'm not sure, but he mentioned my meetings with the mining corporations. One of the other officials, Minister Locks of the Treasury, looked worried. If the Emperor learns about our arrangement with the corporations before the new trade agreement is signed, we need to act quickly, Zorth said. The Senate votes on the agreement in 3 days. What do you suggest? Asked General Vexcor. We need to remove the human from his position. Not permanently, Zorth added quickly. Just long enough to complete our business. Meanwhile, Commander Drell had become increasingly interested in Jack's methods. He found the human in the palace gardens, carefully inspecting the paths the Emperor would take later that day. You've changed security protocols 7 times since arriving, Drell noted. Never the same pattern twice. Patterns can be predicted, Jack replied. Predictability is dangerous. It's exhausting for the other guards, Drell said. Yes, Jack agreed. But being tired is better than being dead. Drell walked alongside Jack for a moment. I've been in security for 20 years. I've never seen someone work like you do. Earth has a saying. The best bodyguard is the one you never notice needing to act. Is that why you spend hours studying palace blueprints and staff routines? Drell asked. Jack stopped walking. How did you know that? I'm the chief of security. I notice things too. Drell smiled slightly. Not as many things as you, perhaps, but enough. That evening, as the Emperor prepared for a private dinner with planetary governors, Jack approached him with concern. Something isn't right, Jack said quietly. Ambassador Zorth met with General Vexicor and several ministers today in a shielded room. The Emperor looked unsurprised. Politics involves many secret meetings, Jack. This felt different. Zorth has been watching you too carefully, and the trade agreement vote is approaching. You think they're planning something against me? Not against you directly, Jack clarified. But something that wouldn't be in the Empire's best interest. Something they don't want you to know about. The Emperor studied Jack's face. You're certain? I've learned to trust my instincts. So have I, the Emperor said, placing a hand on Jack's shoulder. Which is why I trust you. What do you suggest? Let them think their plan is working, Jack said. People reveal more when they believe they're winning. The day of the Senate vote arrived. The Grand Senate chamber filled with representatives from all 50 systems of the Empire. Emperor Zaltheron would preside over the session from his ceremonial throne on the high platform. Jack stood near the Emperor as usual, but something about his stance seemed different. He looked slightly less alert, his eyes not moving with their usual careful precision. "Are you well, Mr. Mercer?" the Emperor asked quietly. "Fine, Your Majesty," Jack replied, but his voice sounded tired. Ambassador Zorth noticed this exchange from his position below. He touched his communicator discreetly. "The human appears weakened. Proceed with the plan." In a service corridor, beneath the Senate chamber, General Vexcor met with 4 beings wearing the uniforms of maintenance workers. "Remember, this is not an assassination. We only need to create enough confusion to remove the human from his position." The false workers nodded and dispersed to their assigned positions. Lady Illyria approached the Emperor's platform. "Your Majesty, I've been reviewing the trade agreement. There are concerning provisions hidden in the technical language." "Oh?" The Emperor raised an eyebrow. "Yes. It appears certain mining corporations would gain exclusive rights to entire outer system planets, bypassing Imperial oversight." The Emperor frowned. "That would allow them to exploit resources without following safety or environmental regulations." As they spoke, Jack swayed slightly on his feet. Commander Drell noticed immediately and moved closer. "Mercer, are you ill?" Drell asked, genuine concern in his voice. "Perhaps just tired," Jack admitted. Suddenly, the lights in the Senate chamber flickered. A moment later, the environmental systems shut down. The temperature began to rise quickly. Shouts of alarm spread through the chamber. The security communication system went offline next. "Emergency protocols!" Commander Drell shouted to his guards. "Protect the Emperor!" As the Imperial guards rushed to form a protective circle around the Emperor, Jack stumbled and fell to one knee. He pressed a hand to his head, looking disoriented. "The human is compromised," General Vexcor announced, pushing through the guards. "I will take charge of the Emperor's protection." The Senate chamber doors sealed shut with a loud clang. Smoke began to pour from the ventilation system. Ambassador Zorth stood up from his seat. "This is clearly a coordinated attack. We must move the Emperor to safety immediately." In the growing chaos, few noticed that Zorth and Vexcor were guiding the Emperor toward a specific exit, one that would take him through a private corridor where no witnesses would be present. Jack watched this unfold through half-closed eyes. As the Emperor was about to be led away, Jack suddenly sprang to his feet, all signs of weakness gone. "Stop," he commanded with such authority that everyone froze. Jack pointed directly at Zorth and Vexcor. "These two are working together. This is not an attack, it's a staged distraction." General Vexcor's scales darkened with anger. "The human is delusional. The Emperor is in danger." "The only danger," Jack said calmly, "is following them into that corridor, where 3 armed men are waiting." The Emperor looked between Jack and the accused officials. "Explain yourself, General." Before Vexcor could respond, Commander Drell's voice came through a backup communication device. "Your Majesty, we've apprehended 3 armed individuals. In the South Corridor, they claim General Vexcor authorized their presence." All eyes turned to the General, whose scales had now turned ash-gray, a sign of fear in Drakians. "How did you know?" Ambassador Zorth asked Jack, his mechanical eye whirring rapidly. "I didn't drink the water," Jack said simply. "The one you had delivered to my quarters this morning, laced with a mild sedative, and I noticed you checking my symptoms too carefully." The Emperor signaled his loyal guards. "Take them into custody." As Zorth and Vexcor were led away, Lady Illyria approached Jack. "You were pretending to be affected." Jack nodded. "People reveal their plans when they think they're succeeding. A very human tactic," she observed. "Yes," Jack agreed. "We learned long ago that deception can be a form of protection." The news of the failed plot spread quickly through the Empire. Ambassador Zorth, General Vexcor, and their co-conspirators faced serious charges. The trade agreement was rewritten to benefit all worlds, not just wealthy corporations. Through it all, Jack continued his duties as if nothing unusual had happened. 1 week after the Senate incident, the Emperor called an emergency meeting of the Inner Court. Only his most trusted advisors were invited, along with Jack. Rumors spread that a major announcement was coming. The Inner Court gathered in a small, elegant chamber deep within the palace. Commander Drell had personally swept the room for surveillance devices. Lady Illyria sat near the Emperor, her silver eyes watching everyone carefully. Several key ministers and loyal nobles filled the remaining seats. Jack stood behind the Emperor, as usual, but the Emperor gestured for him to take a seat at the table. What I'm about to share has been the Empire's most closely guarded secret for 25 years, the Emperor began. Only 3 living beings know this truth. The room grew very quiet. I am half human, the Emperor said simply. Gasps filled the room. Lady Illyria's eyes widened. Commander Drell looked as if he might fall from his chair. My mother was a human diplomat named Eliza Carter. She met my father, the previous Emperor, during the first contact negotiations with Earth. They fell in love against all protocol and tradition. The Emperor's blue skin and Altheri features showed no obvious human traits. No one would have guessed. The Imperial bloodline has always been enhanced through genetic engineering, the Emperor continued. My human heritage was hidden beneath Altheri traits, but it remains part of me. That's why you chose a human bodyguard, Lady Illyria whispered. Partly, the Emperor nodded. But there's more. Jack, would you explain? Jack leaned forward. For 20 years there has been a shadow movement within the Empire. People who learned the Emperor's secret and believe a half-breed should not sit on the throne. We've suspected for years, the Emperor added. But they were too careful, too hidden. I needed someone who could see things differently. Someone human, Commander Drell said, understanding now. Yes, Jack confirmed. The conspirators you caught last week were just one branch. There are others reaching high into the government and military. Lady Illyria looked troubled. If the public learns of your heritage, the time for secrets is ending, the Emperor said firmly. I brought Jack here not just to protect me from assassins, but to help reveal this shadow conspiracy, and to show the Empire that humans are not just our newest allies. They are our equals. One of the ministers spoke up. Your Majesty, this will shock the court. Many still view humans as primitive. That perception has been useful, Jack said. People underestimate what they don't understand. The Emperor stood, his decision made. Tomorrow I will announce my heritage to the full court. Then we will begin the process of truly integrating humans into imperial society. Later that evening, Jack found Lady Illyria waiting for him in a palace garden. You've known all along, she said. About the Emperor's human mother. Yes, Jack admitted. That's why I was selected. The Emperor needed someone who understood both worlds. And the conspiracy? How deep does it go? Deep enough that we needed to let some plots progress to expose the main players, Jack explained. The Senate incident revealed 3 high-ranking officials we hadn't identified before. Lady Illyria studied him with new respect. You risked the Emperor's life? No, Jack corrected. I ensured his safety while creating an opportunity to expose his enemies. There's a difference. A human difference, she noted. Perhaps. Humans learned protection through millennia of conflict. We understand that sometimes you must allow a small danger to prevent a greater one. Lady Illyria looked up at the night sky. The court will never be the same after tomorrow. That's the point, Jack said quietly. Change is coming to the Empire one way or another. Better it comes on the Emperor's terms. The great hall of the Imperial Palace had never been so full. Every member of the court was present, along with representatives from all 50 systems. The air buzzed with speculation about the Emperor's announcement. Jack stood beside the Emperor, on the raised platform, his black uniform crisp and perfect. His eyes moved constantly, watching for any threat. Commander Drell had positioned loyal guards throughout the hall, and Lady Illyria had personally vetted every person in attendance. The Emperor raised his hand, and the hall fell silent. For 1,000 years, the Altheri bloodline has ruled this empire, the Emperor began. We have prided ourselves on tradition, on the purity of our lineage. Today, I reveal a truth that will change how you see your Emperor. He paused, his eyes moving across the crowd. My mother was human. I am half Altheri, half human, the first such being in Imperial history. The silence that followed was absolute. Then the hall erupted in shocked whispers and exclamations. "I understand your surprise," the Emperor continued once the noise subsided. "For 25 years this truth has been hidden, but no longer. The Empire must evolve if it is to survive. We must embrace diversity, not fear it." From the corner of his eye, Jack noticed a slight movement among the diplomatic section. A tall, elegant being slipped a hand inside their ceremonial robe. Jack shifted his weight, ready to move. "This is why I chose a human bodyguard," the Emperor explained. "Not just for protection, but as a symbol. Humans approach problems differently. They see solutions where we see only traditions." The being in the diplomatic section was moving now, pushing slowly toward the center aisle. Jack caught Commander Drell's eye and gave a tiny nod. "Some will say I am not fit to rule because of my mixed heritage," the Emperor said. "To them I say, it is precisely this heritage that makes me the right emperor for this moment in our history." The suspicious diplomat reached the aisle. In one fluid motion, they pulled out a weapon unlike any seen before, a small device that emitted a high-pitched whine. Jack was already moving. He didn't jump in front of the Emperor as many expected. Instead, he threw a small object directly at the would-be assassin. It struck the weapon, causing it to short-circuit in a shower of sparks. Before anyone could react, Commander Drell's guards surrounded the diplomat. "A disruption device," Jack explained as he returned to the Emperor's side. "Designed to bypass our security scans by using components that appear harmless when separated." The Emperor didn't seem surprised or frightened. He simply nodded to Jack and continued his speech. "As you have just witnessed, human ingenuity can be our greatest strength. From this day forward, humans will have equal status in the Empire. They will serve in our military and our government, and yes, even in the Imperial Palace." 1 month later, Jack stood in the palace gardens with the Emperor. New security protocols were in place. 5 more conspirators had been identified and arrested. And most surprisingly, applications from humans for Imperial service had increased tenfold. "Are you satisfied with how things turned out?" the Emperor asked. "It's a good start," Jack replied. "Change takes time." "The court still fears you, you know," the Emperor said with a small smile. "Even more now that they know why I chose you." "Fear can be useful," Jack said. "It makes people pay attention. Will you stay, now that your main mission is complete?" Jack looked out across the garden to where several young guards, including 2 humans, were training under Commander Drell's supervision. "Yes," he decided. "Someone needs to teach them the human way of protection." "And what is that way exactly?" asked the Emperor, though he already knew the answer. "To see what others miss, to adapt when others follow tradition, to use the mind as the greatest weapon." Jack smiled slightly. "And to remember that true protection isn't about stopping a knife or a bullet. It's about making sure the knife or bullet never gets thrown in the first place." Across the galaxy, word spread about the half-human Emperor and his human bodyguard. And slowly, the fear began to transform into something else: respect.